Welcome everybody to our third chapter summary class. So we finished finally 3 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, very important chapter, this one, entitled Karma Yoga, how to act in the world, how to be in the world. So the third chapter itself of the Gita begins with a question from Arjuna. In the first 2 verses, he expresses his doubt, as he does in many, many chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. After completion of one chapter, the beginning of the next chapter, he often expresses some doubt he has had from the previous chapter. So he says in this chapter, "O Lord Krishna, Janardana, if your contention, knowledge, is better than action." You've said in the second chapter, Jayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana. He says, you say, "Oh Lord, knowledge is better than karma, better than action. Then why do you impel me to do this gruesome action, this war? Why are you impelling me to fight?" So the second verse, he says, "Deciding finally what is good, which is better for me, tell me one thing that will give me liberation. I'm as though confused." Not he is as though confused, you are as though confusing me. He says, "Iva." So he doesn't accuse Bhagavan of confusing him. He expresses that he hasn't understood Bhagavan properly. So he says, "Please tell me which is the best course of action." And that is where we begin our third chapter. And this is a continuation of the discussion on Karma Yoga, which begins in chapter 2 alone. We saw in chapter 2 that Bhagavan, Krishna, had praised Jnanam, knowledge, that Jnanam alone was enough to gain self-knowledge. Jnanameva mokshaha, not karma. He has said that. So, but in verse 39 of the second chapter, he says, "Yoge tu imam shrunu," which means, now listen to the yoga of karma. So after saying all that, he says, listen again to the yoga of karma. In the 48th verse, he even exerts Arjuna to perform action, to live the life of a karma yogi. No wonder, we can see from Arjuna's perception, no wonder he was confused. He didn't know what to do. So he asked Bhagavan, his teacher, "What is the best way to gain liberation? Only you can teach me, O Lord. You have to tell me what is the best way to gain liberation." And there's 2 things that he chooses from, Shreyas or Preyas. Shreyas means the moksha marga, the liberation, path of liberation. Preyas is the path in the world, material success. So the exclusive pursuit of jnanam or more karma predominant lifestyle, this is what he's asking. And tadekam vadanishchitya, he says, tell me definitely, decisively, Krishna, don't confuse me. Poor thing, he's really confused in this beginning of this chapter. So he says, Shreyas is what is ultimately beneficial to me. Moksha, freedom, the freedom from the notion of all limitations, bondage, and inadequacy. Whereas prayas, the life of karma, and karma palam, results of action, are predominant and they're also binding. So how do I get moksha? By performing karma. How do I get moksha? By acting in the world. So with this question itself, what does Arjuna show? He shows his lack of understanding, actually. He doesn't understand what life of renunciation really is. True renunciation is not giving up actions. True renunciation is not giving up your roles in life. It is not giving up your karma or anything you're doing. That is not renunciation. That is the renunciation that most people know. Leave the world, don't be in the world, leave everything and go off to the forest. That is not what Bhagavan says is renunciation. And this is where Arjuna's confusion also comes. So with this chapter and in the consequent chapters, Bhagavan will clarify what real renunciation is. Very important to understand. So throughout this whole chapter, Lord Krishna enlightens Arjuna regarding karma. And it begins with a very important verse in the tradition, which is the 3rd verse of the 3rd chapter. Bhagavan refutes in this verse the 4-path theory. Many of you may have read this 4 paths, Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. With this verse, Bhagavan actually refutes that there is no 4 paths actually. He says, Lokesmin dvivida nishta pura prokta maya nagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. There are only two ways of living your life, he tells Arjuna very clearly, a twofold committed lifestyle. So the renunciates, for the people who are given to this renunciation type of buddhi, to pursue self-knowledge to the exclusion of everything else, Jnana Yoga is the way. Jnana Yoga, but it is very difficult, very difficult. The second lifestyle he recommends is those who pursue activity alongside self-knowledge are known as karma yogis. So there's only two lifestyles here. Bhagavan gives two choices. If you have that type of mind, that renunciate type of mind, where you can drop all the roles and only pursue jnanam, knowledge, then you can go for the jnana yoga, that marga. But if you're in the world, mainly for grahastas who have children, who have roles, who have jobs and everything, Bhagavan says karma yoga also is there. For both the jnana yogi and karma yogi, the goal is the same. Where is the goal different? Moksha remains the goal as well. So there's no other path actually. This four-path theory, we should understand properly. This Raja Yoga, Upasana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, they all come under karma only. Everything is action. They're encompassed within karma. And there is also no real choice between two yogas here either. The yoga chooses you. You don't have a choice over the yoga. It is the yoga that chooses you. You cannot leave everything and do jnana yoga by neglecting your duties, because that is where Bhagavan brings in your way of purification. So moksha, both have moksha is the goal. They are not two distinct ways to liberation, because jnanameva moksha, only knowledge can free you, because it's a question of ignorance. So karma cannot free you. But karma gives you the means to purify your mind, to discover that freedom, and for knowledge to stay with you. So one is not better than another. One leads naturally into the other as well. Because a life of jnana yoga requires certain qualifications of the mind. We've seen that sadhana chatushtaya sampattihi. It's not so easy to gain those qualifications. Viveka, vairagya, all of those, we saw a huge list. Not just in Tattva Bodha, in chapter 13, we saw that value of values, a list of 20 values that the mind has to have to a relative measure. Not easy to gain at all. So Jnana Yoga is for very, very few, for the very few who are already prepared. But you can gain that status to to pursue Jnana Yoga after having lived a life of Karma Yoga for a length of time. But it is not easy to withdraw from all the roles that you have to play in your life and pursue jnanam, exclusive of everything else. So Bhagavan says, that is why Bhagavan says very clearly to Arjuna, you are not ready for that. Your karma yoga is most suited to you. You are a mumukshu. Yes, I agree. You want moksha. Yes, I agree. But this karma yoga lifestyle is the best for you. And usually this karma yoga lifestyle is recommended for householders as well. So in the next few verses, Lord Krishna tells us why it is important to act in life, why we should not neglect action. So from verses 4 to 9, he discusses this, why you should act. So he says, one cannot remain inactive. Even if you try and remain inactive, it takes a lot of preparation to gain mastery over your mind and over your organs of action as well. So the mind has to follow the will of a person, and that takes tremendous, tremendous practice as well. So Bhagavan says in the 5th verse, very important verse, Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krita karyate hyavashah karma sarva prakriti jay gunaihi. If you remember, he says that how a human being is driven to perform action because due to the forces of nature. Even if you sit for a while, how long can you sit without doing anything? You will be driven to act by the forces of nature. Bhagavan says no one can remain actionlessness, because involuntary actions are also taking place inside you. So Bhagavan wants to clarify with these verses that naishkarmya or actionlessness does not mean giving up action. It is only here where one is a karta, non-doer. It is not giving up external action. Even a sannyasi, a sadhu, a renunciate will have to act. So actionlessness should not be taken literally. Many people have done that actually, and they sit and they don't do anything. That is called laziness. We saw that, not actionlessness. We have to differentiate between laziness and akarta or non-doership. So Bhagavan goes on to elaborate here. In the sixth verse, he says, the one who withdraws from all action, controlling the sense organs and organs of action externally, sits in kind of meditation and everything and looks from outside, everybody will think, wow, they're amazing. Look at that. They're sitting in meditation for hours. They must be some jnanis. But the mind, Bhagavan says, the mind still dwells on the same sense objects. Mind goes out. He says, mityachara, such a person is mityachara. So why is he telling Arjuna all this? Because he's telling Arjuna, so we, and all of us at the same time, that we cannot fool ourselves into thinking we're highly spiritual beings and then we can sit without having any thoughts of sense pleasures in our mind. That is what Bhagavan is asking us to examine our own minds. We cannot do that because there are desires that drag out. So better to be in the world and act than rather than Bhagavan is saying, be a mityachara like this, like a hypocrite, sitting and meditating and saying, I'm into spiritual life and thinking of Mercedes-Benz or a nice house. So this Bhagavan says is a vimudhatma, the one who is deluded. So from verses 9 until 19, Bhagavan elaborately discusses this karma yoga topic. A combination, which is, we know, karma yoga, we have to get into action, we have to act. So Bhagavan says this karma yoga is a combination of appropriate action and proper attitude. That is what karma yoga means, actually. Appropriate action, correct action, and proper attitude. This is how you make your life. So Bhagavan, in these verses, 9 until 19, what does he ask? How does one perform actions in life? Yeah, there's two questions he answers. How does one perform actions in life? And how does one maintain equanimity, samatvam, this relative peace of mind while performing the actions? Very important section 9 to 19, because that is what we all need. How do we live in the world, basically? So the ninth verse is a very beautiful verse where Bhagavan says, this is how we should learn to act in our life. He says, Yajñartat karmanon yatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartam karma kaunteya mukta sangas samachara. So we saw this verse as well, Yajñartam. All actions are to be performed for the sake of that Ishvara, for the sake of that Yajna. Yajna in this verse means Ishvara, very important verse. And how should these actions be done? He says, Mukta Sangaha, without worrying for the results. Leave the results to Bhagwan's hand. You just do your work, that's all. Work is worship. You just do your work. Don't worry about what the results are going to happen. I will provide whatever you need when I feel it is good for you. So, Mukta Sangha, very beautiful, he says, not depending on what happens for one's happiness. Take everything as prasadam. So in this way, one is not bound by karma and karma palam. This is the way we release ourselves from this bondage of results of action, constantly clamoring for things to go my way. I release myself from that when I live this type of life. And the mind, what happens? Mind is naturally gains the disposition of equanimity, of samatvam. It is a natural consequence. You cannot avoid. If you live this type of life, your mind will definitely become peaceful and quiet. That is what you want ultimately, is it not? Everybody wants a peaceful mind. Bhagavan is giving a technique here to develop that peaceful mind while you work in the world. So this from verses 10 to 15, he, again, the same topic, he discusses certain karmas that are prescribed in the Vedas. He addresses those as well. And he brings in this idea of propitiating the devatas. If you remember, very beautiful concept that we have in the Veda of this natural orders of nature. Everything in nature is personified as a deity. And these deities are called devatas in Sanskrit. The nature, very nature that we see around us is the material cause of this universe, is Bhagavan in that form itself. So for each order that we see in the nature, I'm sure there must be even a deity for the order. If you look in the Veda, the ancient text, there will be a deity for the order of gravity, a deity for the order of the water cycle. There will be all these deities for everything. So various orders are much appreciated in these verses and interwoven into the fabric of all of nature. And Vedic culture contains a lot of this nature worship. This is what Bhagavan is saying in these verses. He is saying, offer gratitude to everything. You are here, you are surviving because of the blessing of all these orders, because of the blessing of all these devatas. So in these verses, he very beautifully brings in this attitude of gratitude. Right activity means right attitude. And right attitude means an attitude of contribution. We have to grow from being survivors in life to contributors to this jagat. That is what he brings in here, that idea of contribution as opposed to survival. So we have to return somehow the energy that has been given to us by this jagat, by Ishvara, all that has been given to us. How do we return? This is why he says, this worship of the devatas, you propitiate the devatas, and then they will bless the whole jagat by taking care of all the orders that are going on. So selflessness, he brings into these verses, the idea of selflessness, not living to fulfill only your needs. Definitely you have to fulfill your needs, because if your needs are not fulfilled, you will not feel whole as a person. So always charity begins at home. I have to fulfill my needs. I cannot neglect my needs and fulfill everybody else's needs. Then I will burn out. That is what's called burnout. And that is why I have to see I'm a whole individual first. I have a relative self-esteem. I have to nurture myself first. And then I can become more of a contributor. But Bhagavan is saying here, don't live only for yourself in life. Don't only fulfill only your own needs. Think of others. Think of the community. Think of society. Helps neutralize your raga, dvesha. This way of life, this Vedic way of life really helps to neutralize the binding likes and dislikes and expand your mind more and more. Because only with an expanded mind can consciousness be actually grasped, understood. So selflessness in these sections, he's talking about harmony. Vedic life is one of harmony with all things and all people. And of course, living in harmony means living with Ishvara in your life. So these verses, I call them the Vedic ecology verses. Pancha Maha Yajnas, we saw that the contributions, that 5 great contributions that we do, Bhuta Yajna and Deva Yajna are brought in here by Bhagwan, worshipping the other living beings and also the Devatas, the Bhagwan in the form of the Jagat. And when I worship like this, what happens? He says you acknowledge the cosmic connection. You acknowledge that you are not an alienated, an isolated individual on this planet, that you're all connected. Everybody is connected. And with that connection, you're connected to the whole as well. You're not isolated from the whole. Wherever there is a total, there's always an individual related to that total. And Ishvara is that total in the universe, the order of the universe, supreme intelligence, but seen from certain standpoint. He is seen as phenomenon, various phenomenon that, that is the intelligence behind various orders of science in this Jagat as well. So natural laws, forces, all of this, presiding deities of the world as well. So very beautiful section, this section. And this section culminates in verse 16. 16 is a very important verse where Bhagavan talks about the cosmic wheel. Contains a beautiful analogy of the cosmic wheel, which is already in motion. It is turning constantly, going round and round. He says, this is life. Evam pravartitam chakram. This is the wheel of life. This is the life that is going on. And all of us are a part of this cosmic wheel. Everybody is participating in this cosmic wheel. You can see yourselves revolving like in this, like the planets revolve around the sun. This is an order that your whole life is part of this cosmic wheel. And you are all making it turn. Everybody contributes to the turning of the cosmic wheel. How? By doing your bit in life, by doing what is to be done by you at a given time, at a given place, in a given situation. How beautiful. Just you, by doing what is to be done at a given time, at a given place, in a given situation, doing your duty, you make the wheel, the cosmic wheel, turn in life. You make the cosmic wheel. Everybody contributes to that cosmic wheel turning. And all of life is within this order, doing what is to be done, playing your role to the best of your ability. You are aiding Ishvara. You are helping the whole Jagat, actually. You think you're doing it for yourself. No, Bhagavan says, all your actions contribute to the whole, and it makes the life go round as well. So this is called niyati, order. So live by doing your duty, you're living in life harmony with this order. You're not abusing or misusing your free will that is given to you. So, and he also says, by not living such a life, conversely, he says, if you live only for your senses and if you live only for yourself, a human being, Bhagavan says, wastes away their life. He says that. You waste away your life if you don't live in order with this cosmic wheel, this cosmic journey. It's such a beautiful analogy that Bhagavan has given. We can all see ourselves as part of this big wheel that is turning constantly, wheel of life. And everybody is contributing to that turning by doing what is to be done in their lives. So doing what is to be done, we know, is dharma. The ability to take decisions is what differentiates us from animals. This is the only thing that differentiates from animals, the ability to make decision, and that buddhi, intellect, is given to a human being so you can choose in life. Bhagavan is saying, don't waste the gift and lose your chance in life. Use it wisely. Use your time well in life. So in verse 17 to 18, Bhagavan, now he introduces another topic. He introduces the topic of how a wise person considers action, which is a very important topic. How does a wise person consider action? So he says, Atmanyeva cha santushtaha tasya karyam na vidyate. The wise one is contented in the self alone. There he remains there remains nothing to be done by him. When he's contented with the self alone, there remains nothing to be done by him. And Bhagavan also went on to say, Naiva tasya kritenartaha na kriteneha kaschana. For the person who is content in their self, what purpose is there to do or not to do action? So this is how Bhagavan begins this. But despite this statement made by Bhagavan, what does he say? Nevertheless, the wise person does act. The wise person does not need to act, but he does act. Why? And that is the beauty of it. He says, for the sake of dharma, for the sake of helping people stay in the right direction in life, to spiritual life, to liberation, he calls that loka sangraham. For society's sake, for others' sake, a wise person will be acting in life. That is the only reason for their acting. They don't need to act. They can sit like Ramana Maharishi actually on a mountain and not do anything. They can sit in the Himalayas and meditate in a cave all their lives. They don't need to be. But there are wise people who act in the world. And this is totally selfless giving. This is what we mean by selflessness. There's no dependence on any return from anybody to feel happy. He's already happy within himself. There's no expectation of any return as well. So a wise person will act in the world, Bhagavan says, for the sake of others. That is the main reason for acting. Now, from verse 20 to 29, Bhagavan discusses how the jnani, how the enlightened person serves as a role model for those doing karma. Very beautiful verses. For those living in the world, the wise person becomes a role model. In the 20th verse, he uses the example of King Janaka. Janakadi, he says, King Janaka was a very, very well-known jnani. He was a grihastha jnani. There's two types of jnanis, the jnanis who are not householder jnanis, but there are jnanis who live householder life, and they are still enlightened. Janaka was one amongst them, and he was a king. He had a palace. He had all of, so much to take care of, administration of the palace, taking care of, all the family, all of that he did, but as a wise person, as a jnani. So he says here, despite that Janaka having attained Jivan Mukti, he played the role, he stayed in that place, he played the role for maintaining the welfare of others. Loka sangraham evapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. Bhagavan says he did it for Loka sangraham, he did it for the sake of others. So this is how a wise person may choose to be an example for others. And those who choose, how will they act? He says also, more importantly, in the 21st verse, he says, very, very beautiful verse as well. Yadyadacharati shreshtaha tattadevetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastadanubhartate. If somebody has some standing in society, if a person commands power and prestige, people will follow whatever he or she does. So this verse is for leaders in society, not just leaders, it can be anybody. So anybody that somebody else looks up to. So we all have people who look up to us. I'm sure, I don't know about that, but I think at least one or two will look up to you in life. At least the children look up to the parents. So there are people that we are examples for in life. So what Bhagavan is saying here is that with power comes great responsibility. When you're in a position of power, you have to be responsible as a person. Now, in this context, Arjuna was recognized in society. He was a great, great warrior. He was well-known, admired figure in society. Such an exalted jiva, an individual, must act prudently and properly in accordance with dharma, as others will start emulating the actions. Now we know in the history of mankind how many wrong leaders we've had and how people have been like sheep. People, unfortunately, a lot of people are like sheep. They don't think, they follow. And we have one very, very good example for this type of sheepish thinking with the Second World War. How all of these people, despite knowing against dharma, so many things that were happening against dharma, that the people actually followed such a leader. And this is what Bhagavan is saying, be very careful with if you are given that position and power by your prarabdha karma, if you're brought to any position, be very careful how you act, because people have the tendency to follow the leader, okay? So he says, this applies, as I said, anyone held in esteem by another being, such as a parent for a child, as a teacher for, the students, they have the duty to teach through their actions. So it's very true. Actions speak louder than words. Words, we may be able to see words again and again, talk again and again, but it's actions that speak louder than words. It's the way of life, the way that person lives that also impacts other people as well. So very, very important verse. And to make his point more emphatic, Bhagavan uses himself as an example in the next few verses. If you remember, from 22 to 26, Lord Krishna emphasizes, he uses himself as an example because there's nothing for him to be gained by acting, is there? He's an avatar. Why does he need to act? He doesn't need to do anything in the world. But he says, Name parthasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana. There's nothing for me to be done in the three worlds. I'm the Lord. There's nothing for me to be done at all. But he says, I still do act. Whereas as Avatar Krishna, I will act. He goes as far as to say, Utsi deyuri me lokaha na kuryam karma chedaham sankarasya cha karta syat upahanyami maaf prajaha. So he says in this verse, if I were not to perform action, these people would perish. Everybody would perish. I would be the author of confusion in this whole society, and I would destroy all the beings. Bhagavan himself says that. If how would he destroy them? That's what we have to understand. If you remember, how would he destroy them? Shankara, here Adi Shankara brings in a very valid point. If people stop doing anything by following Krishna's example, if we say, Krishna just sits and says, I'm the Lord of the universe, I don't need to do anything, then everybody, the whole world, Jagat would say, okay, we don't do anything either. They would actually become insane. Shankara says people will go mad. That is why they will destroy themselves, because people have many desires. They require actions to be fulfilled. This is what Bhagavan knows. We cannot force people to, get rid of desires. That's why we always say we cannot tell people, get rid of desires, don't have any desires, because it's very natural to desire, very natural for human beings to have desires. But Gita talks about desire management. It's more desire management. How do you live your life managing your desires? So he says here, people have many desires, actions you need to fulfill those desires. But even if there's no viveka, there's no viveka, meaning there's no discriminative analysis of what is transitory and what is permanent. That's the whole problem. People don't know what is transitory. I'm fulfilling the desire for what? Always for karma phalam, results that are going to vanish within time. They're not permanent results. They're going to come, they're going to go, but yet I keep doing that. That is what is called samsara. I keep fulfilling desires for the sake of impermanence. But I cannot stop at the same time. However much I hear Bhagavad Gita saying that is not going to help, I cannot stop. I keep going after, because there is pressure of desire. We don't say that. And that's what Bhagavan says. Even if people know in their heart of hearts, things are permanent, they're not going to last, they keep doing it again and again. If I say, don't have any desire, get rid of desire, suppression will lead to insanity. That is what Bhagavan says here. Suppression of desire will lead to insanity. So the destruction that Bhagavan is talking about here, if he doesn't teach people how to act properly as avatara through his, through his teachings, he is going to, people are going to go off mentally. In the mental level, they are not going to be well as well. That is why he says to Arjuna very clearly, you have to act. You have to act as human beings. All human beings have to act in your life. Don't stop acting. And the 26th verse, he says, it's another important verse. He tells us how the wise person will act when dealing with others. So he brings in, he says, highlights the compassion of a wise person, also of himself, the compassion that such people will have towards beings. Not needing to act, they act in order to teach. Knowing that everybody is ignorant, he does not disturb or judge their thinking. If they have desires, there's no judge. There's no judgment. This is called true accommodation. This is called selfless love. It's total acceptance, even though, Krishna, wise person, knows those people don't need to act. It's going to, again, perpetuate samsara. If they have that pressure to fulfill desires, they will keep, they na buddhi bhedam janayet. Wise people, they will not disturb others' thinking. Even though he or she knows they act out of ignorance, they will not disturb people, their thinking. So, karma sanginam sarva karmani samacharan joshayet. He, in fact, Bhagavan says, encourages the ones committed to the results of action to perform the actions well. They will tell you, do it this way, do it that way. People who come to wise people to ask, how will I want to start this business. What should I do? Should I do this, do that? Many people ask wise people, and they will not say, no, why do you want to do that? Spiritual life is the best. Go and sit and meditate under the tree. Why are you going to get into worldly life more and do all of that? Samsara. No, they'll say, go, yes, do it well. They will give advice how to do as well. So that is what Bhagavan says. A wise person will never criticize the otherwise. They will always encourage for them to feel fulfilled and happy as well. And he sets an example for all of them of how to act as well. So with this, that topic of the wise person and the action and the avatar's actions also, he completes. Verses 27, 28, 29 are an elaboration of the 5th verse, where he talks about being driven to action. Very interesting verses. The topic of Prakriti comes in here, the material cause, and the 3 gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. If you remember, Prakriti is another name for Maya, Avidya. Prakriti, Avidya, Maya, they're the same. These are all names given to the material cause of this universe. Each one's body, mind, sense complex is only a modification of Prakriti. And these gunas are the sattva, rajas, tamas. Everybody is governed by sattva, rajas, tamas. These gunas, that we've seen that they operate in one's own mind as well as in the exterior world. And they're the main constituents of avidya or maya, the power that deludes. We saw yesterday, power that deludes and the power that projects. Maya has two powers. It deludes you and it projects something else. First of all, it covers your reality of yourself and then it projects what you're not. So the sattva, rajas, tamas is contained within that maya. And if one examines the mind, Bhagavan is saying the role of the three gunas is very evident in the moods of the mind. It's very interesting. The mental moods drive us to action. So when the body becomes tamasic, we go to sleep. We're very tired. We don't want to act. Body is very rajasic. Rajasic mind means ambition, action, activity. I have to get out. I have to do something. Sattva means what? I'm very happy to sit still and just be with myself. Very peaceful. I have that kind of mood. But under the sway of these three, one cannot but be driven to action. That is what Bhagavan is saying. How one becomes bound to action and the result of action is seen in these verses. The I notion, Bhagavan says, Prakrite kriyamanani guneh karmani sarvashah ahankara vimoodatma kartahamiti manyate. This I notion, which is rooted in the body, mind, senses, identified completely with the three gunas, takes itself to be the doer. That is the whole key. That I notion takes itself to be the doer. And following the dictates of all the three gunas, which cause the thought modifications in the mind, one is driven to action, identifying totally with the thought. So it's actually the thought we go after that makes us act, actually. And this leads to subjectivity, the limited individual, and the wrong sense, erroneous notion of I. So again, this vimoodaha, it makes me deluded. I become deluded because I have wrong notions about myself when I live this type of life. So he says that I'm driven to action because of this Maya Shakti. I'm driven to act because I don't know my true nature. What drives us to action actually? It is because I don't feel complete, right? It is all, again, avidya, kama, karma. Adi Shankara very beautifully says, ignorance of your true nature as being complete and adequate and full and whole. If you know your true nature as being complete and adequate, you're the meaning of satisfaction, you're the meaning of fullness, you're the meaning of completeness, wholeness, then where is the question of acting for wholeness? Why do I act? Because I feel I lack something, right? So always action is because of a sense of lack. The desire arises in the mind, and I feel if I fulfill this desire, I will not lack anymore. And this is where the trap is, because however much I fulfill, we've seen that the lack will still be there. So vimoodaha, Bhagavan says in this verse, these people, they are vimoodaha. But verse 28, he says, direct contrast to this previous verse, a jnani will not, he'll know. On the other hand, he doesn't have that confusion. He knows the body, mind, senses are nothing but the self. And he knows himself to be limitless consciousness. There's no need in him. He doesn't need anything. So this again, Bhagavan brings in this idea again of being driven to action. And this is what Arjuna will talk about from in the next few verses as well. But just to complete a very, very important section from verse 30 to 35, this is a significance of Karma Yoga is highlighted and the teaching is summarized in these verses. These verses, if you understand it enough to understand what Karma Yoga is and how one should do what is to be done in life. The next verse is one of the most important verses of this chapter, and it is worth memorizing. Bhagavan talks of himself in first person in this verse. All the components of Karma Yoga are brought into this verse, the 30th verse. Adhyatma chetasa, with a discriminating mind, a mind given to the pursuit of self-knowledge, moksha. So the Adhyatma chetasa, Firstly, I am clear what I want in life. There's no doubt over my Purushartha. What is the goal of my life? This point is often put aside, and what really turns karma into yoga and what is meant by discriminating mind is put to one side, and we don't really understand. The goal has to be clear. Karma yoga only can come into the picture when your goal in life is clear. Your mind has to constantly see, what is it I'm here born on this planet for? There is a purpose. Our scriptures talk about that purpose. You have to understand more and more the difference between what is permanent and what is temporary, what is going to go, more and more. So Bhagavan, once you know that, then karma yoga becomes relevant. You will live this verse in your life. He says, so the question in this verse is, how do I perform actions? Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasya, he says, renounce all actions to me. Lord Krishna says, give all your actions to me. Dedicate every act of yours to me. No duty should be seen as unpleasant. Every role you play is an offering to me. Nothing should be seen as unpleasant, because everything, when it's offered to me, it is what I have given you as an opportunity to offer to me as well. So remembering while acting in your life, Bhagavan says, remember these three, and there's such beautiful words that Lord Krishna brings in these verses. While you're acting in life, remember, nirashihi, he says in this verse, be prepared for all types of results in your life. So act when it literally means without expectation, but we know very clearly we will never act without expectation. Expect a result is very natural. So what Bhagavan is saying here is that all actions are performed for results alone. So I do want something to happen in a certain way, but he says, even though there's no harm in expecting, don't be shocked if things don't go the way you planned. That is what he's saying with this word, nirashihi. Don't be shocked if things don't go the way you plan. Be prepared to accept anything that happens without complaint. Whatever you do, that accept the result without complaint. We've seen this. Things can go our way. Things may not go our way. Things may go better than what we expect. But nirashihi is for the last type of desire, which is what? The most difficult one I find to assimilate always in my life is when things go opposite to what I expect. That's when I bring in this word that Bhagavan says, nirashihi. Let go and let Bhagavan take care. Then he uses another word, nirmama. Nirmama, these three words are worth memorizing. They're worth putting in your brain again and again. You are not responsible for your success or failure in life. You're not responsible for your success or so-called failure, we will say, because failure is only a viewpoint. It is a subjective perception. What you see as failure may be a success for Bhagavan spiritually for you. So what he is given is what you need in that moment. Whatever you are going through is what you need to go through in that moment. It is for your own growth. And the idea of this nirmama is when all he gives is for the best for the jiva, for the individual, where is the question of seeing anything as failure? Everything is a stepping stone to success, actually. And success is spiritual, always measured in spiritual success. So the karma phaladata is the giver of results of actions, is the cause for the results of your actions. Take credit for your hard work. Effort. Take credit for your effort. No harm. But success is because of that extra factor. Success is because of that grace, because of that extra factor which we call Bhagavan. So the second word he uses in this verse. Now the final word he uses in this verse, another beautiful word to remember, Vigatat Jvaraha. Okay, so things didn't go the way I planned, the way I wanted. Do I lose my balance? No. Do I fail and falter? No. Through this word, Lord Krishna conveys that this is not the way of acceptance, to fail and falter and to lose our balance. A karma yogi will always maintain a balance, an equanimity. Disappointment will arise. We are not emotional rocks, but we remain objective to it. So acceptance in failure, humility in success is the key of this verse. That is what Bhagavan is saying. Acceptance in failure, humility in success. And you learn by living these three words to avoid all frustration, all anger, because desire was not fulfilled in life. How? And that is where that Bhagavan's words become very important, by seeing the Lord's hand in the whole matter. That is why he speaks in first person, Mai Sarvani Karmani. I am the one who is doing everything. He knows when to give, what to give, to whom to give. So this attitude of Vigata Jwaraha brings in Samatva, mental equipoise, relative stability of mind. And when you get this type of life, you live this life, what happens? When we talk about disturbance of the mind, it is because we don't live this life. Disturbance of the mind only comes when I cannot accept this type of life. When I live this type of life, I assimilate this fact. Mind gets purer and purer in course of time by assimilating these facts in life. And a pure mind is a peaceful mind. That is what Bhagavan wants us to gain. A pure mind is a peaceful mind. When people ask, how do I know when my mind is pure? How do I know my mind is purified? You are the pramana for yourself. You have to see, am I more peaceful? When I live this type of lifestyle that Bhagavan recommends, am I more peaceful? And that is where Bhagavan says, I am giving you the antidote to disturbances in your life. I am giving you the remedy for disturbances in your life. In the next few verses that we'll see next week. But he goes on to say that if you don't choose this life, you will be disturbed. He says that very clearly. I'm giving this teaching. If you listen to me, you will have peace in your life. And he says, if you don't listen to me, if you find, some criticism with the teaching I'm giving you, he says very clearly, you will have to keep going through ups and downs. You'll have to keep going through disturbances in life. He is not bothered by it, but he says in the next couple of verses, how beautifully you can see the conversation between him and Arjuna. He says, I'm giving you the teaching, I'm giving you the method to find peace in your life. But if you don't want to follow it, if you don't think it's for you, then you have to go through the ups and downs. We cannot do anything else. That is it. So we'll see those verses next week, and we'll finish off the summary. But I didn't want to rush through the summary. I wanted you to see the flow of the chapter, how beautifully the conversation between the Lord and his disciple flows. And you can see that without break, there is always, the elaboration of this karma yoga topic.